They say your life flashes before your eyes when you die. Mine flashed after, when I came home and found I had none. I stood there for what felt like hours, keys still in my hand still trembling. I kept turning the brass one, the one with the little notch I filed down myself in '82, but the lock refused to turn. Not jammed, replaced. My breath rasped as I leaned against the doorframe, the pain in my chest dull but present, like the ghost of the heart attack I just survived. I hadn't been discharged 5 hours, and already the world felt colder. The door opened, but not for me. A man I'd never seen stepped halfway out. "Can I help you?" I blinked at him, my voice caught behind weeks of tubes and silence. "This is my house," I finally said. It came out hoarse, pathetic. He frowned. "No, it's not. My wife and I bought this place 2 weeks ago." The word hit me like a second heart attack. Bought. "You're mistaken," I muttered, trying again with the key. "This is 318 Sycamore. I raised my son here, my wife." My throat closed. He stepped fully out now, defensive. "Look, man, I don't know who you are, but we signed papers, got the deed notarized and everything. Maybe you're looking for—" A cough cut him off mine. The cold was getting into my lungs. And then I saw it. My name was gone, scraped off the mailbox. In its place, McCarthy. My knees buckled. I gripped the porch railing like a drowning man. On the lawn were trash bags, my chair, my uniform, my wife's planter box shattered beside it. "Oh God." The man shifted awkwardly. "Listen, maybe you should call someone." I couldn't respond. I was staring at a photo frame, cracked but still intact. Me in uniform, Evan beside me. That stupid graduation cap he wore sideways. The day he said, "You're my hero, Dad." A memory so loud it drowned everything. "I'm sorry," the man said, and for a moment I believed he meant it. He went back inside. The door clicked, a new lock, a new life. And I was no longer part of it. Ruth saw me an hour later. I must have looked like a ghost slumped beside trash bags. She rushed from her porch, robe flapping. "Robert, sweet Lord, why are you out here like this?" My mouth moved before I could control it. "Evan changed the locks, sold the house, he." Her hand flew to her mouth. "Oh, honey." "He didn't even call," I said, the words heavy with shame. "He just took it." Ruth knelt beside me, gripping my arm. "Come with me, we'll figure this out. I'll make some tea." I stared at the chipped porch. "He scraped my name off the mailbox, Ruth, like I never existed." She didn't answer. What could she say? That night I sat in my truck. No house, no keys, just a box of my life in the backseat. The motel down the road wanted a credit card. I had cash, not much, not enough. I held the photo frame. My thumb brushed Evan's face. What made him do it? Greed? Shame? Or had he always been waiting for a moment when I couldn't fight back? I gave him everything, I thought, and he left me with nothing. No, not nothing. I still had my discharge papers, my deed copy, my pension card, my military file, documents, proof. They wanted to bury me quietly. They forgot old soldiers don't go quietly. If someone's listening to this, don't let silence swallow your story. They count on your silence. And silence is the only weapon they understand. Tell it. I stared at the sunrise through a cracked windshield. Evan thought I was dead weight. He just didn't know the weight of my silence. Yet, they didn't just take my house. They left me sitting next to my life like a bag of trash on the curb. And no one stopped to ask why. The soup steamed in Ruth's trembling hands. She set it on the pavement beside me like I was some lost animal. I didn't reach for it. "I told you he wasn't right," she whispered, kneeling slowly, joints cracking. "But I didn't think he'd go this far." I stared ahead at the blue recycling bin where Evan had dumped my photo albums. One corner stuck out, my wife's handwriting on a Christmas tag from '92. "To my Robert, come home safe." I should have burned the whole street down. Instead, I just said, "He looked me in the eye and lied." Ruth looked like she might cry. "He's not your son anymore." My jaw locked. He told the hospital he was moving me somewhere safe. "Don't worry about the house, Dad." Those were his words. "And you believed him," she said softly. "I always believed him," I said, "even when I shouldn't have, especially when I shouldn't have." People walked by. Nobody looked at me. A woman walking her dog paused when the pup sniffed at my bags, then yanked the leash and crossed the street. I might as well have been invisible. Ruth touched my arm. "Come to my place just for tonight." "No," I shook my head. "I need to be where I was thrown. I need to sit with it." She sighed. "You're freezing. At least take the blanket." "I'll be fine." She stood slowly, brushing at her knees. "Robert, you don't have to prove you're strong." I looked up at her. "I'm not trying to prove anything. I'm remembering who I am." She placed the blanket gently over my shoulders and walked away, slow and limping. There's something sacred in humiliation. You start to see who's real, who crosses the street, who brings soup, who changed the damn locks while you lay dying. The sun dropped behind the rooftops. The sky bled purple and orange, the kind of dusk my wife used to photograph through the kitchen window. I used to think there was always another sunrise waiting. Now I wasn't so sure. I climbed into my truck, old, loud, but mine. It smelled like spilled coffee and motor oil and loneliness. I curled the blanket around me and reached into the glove box. Deeds, medical files, my military record, a pocket knife, a folded photo of me and Evan from the day I retired my last salute, his first suit. He'd written on the back, "To my hero." I tore it in half and shoved it back into the glove box. A car pulled up beside me. The window rolled down. A young guy, early 30s, Bluetooth in his ear, judgment in his eyes. "You okay, sir?" I nodded. He looked at the trash bags on the sidewalk, then at me. "Need a shelter or something?" I didn't answer. He gave a little shrug. "You shouldn't sleep here, it doesn't look good." I leaned out my window, my voice gravel. "Tell that to the man who lives in my house." He stared. "Wait, this your house?" It was. The man blinked, shifted in his seat. "That's cold." He rolled up the window and drove away. I pulled the blanket tighter. The street went dark. Porch lights flicked on like polite little spotlights reminding me where I didn't belong. I spoke out loud, not to anyone alive. "Maggie, he took it. Our boy took it." The wind didn't answer, but I felt her silence. I gripped the box on my lap tighter. The box with the last documents I owned that meant anything. No yelling, no fists, that's what I told myself, that's what I told her. But paper cuts deeper than fists ever could. Justice is patient. Revenge is quieter than people think, and old men like me, we don't break, we build cases. I closed my eyes and listened to the silence. In it, I heard something that sounded a lot like strategy. I thought betrayal felt like a door slamming in your face, but it turns out it looks a lot like your own name on a lie you never signed. The woman behind the counter didn't meet my eyes at first. Her name tag read Lynette, and her hands were jittery as she typed. The county recorder's office buzzed with that quiet hum, printers, whispered questions, shuffling paper. It smelled like mildew and paper cuts. "I'm just trying to confirm the status of a property deed," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. 318 Sycamore. My name's Robert C. Whitmore." She clicked a few more times, then frowned at her screen. "Do you have a photo ID?" she asked. I handed over my license. The plastic stuck slightly from the cold sweat on my palms. After a moment she blinked and said, "This property was transferred. Deed shows it was signed 2 weeks ago by you." I leaned in. "That's impossible." She hesitated. "Would you like to see it?" "Yes," I said, "print it." She nodded and walked to the back, leaving me to stare at my reflection in the partition glass. bloodshot eyes, sunken cheeks, hospital band still faint on my wrist. She returned and slid the paper toward me with two hands, almost like an apology. It was a scanned copy. There on the bottom line was my signature, Robert C. Whitmore, smooth, exact, convincing. And dated the day I was under anesthesia, with a breathing tube down my throat. I didn't speak, I just stared at it. Do you want a certified copy? She asked gently. How many am I allowed? I asked. Up to 5. I'll take all 5. I paid in crumpled bills. My hand trembled as I shoved the documents into a battered folder Ruth had given me. The word deed felt like it weighed more than the whole house. Lynette cleared her throat. Sir, I'm not supposed to say anything, but if you were in the hospital that day. I was, I said, on life support. She nodded slowly. You might want to talk to someone, a legal aid group, or the district attorney's office. My jaw clenched. No, not yet. Her eyes softened. I'm sorry, I really am. I didn't respond. I walked out into the cold. It's one thing to lose everything. It's another to be told you gave it away while you were dying. The motel smelled like old smoke and fried air. One bulb flickered. I dropped the folder on the desk and sat on the edge of the bed. The sheets were thin, the silence louder than any scream. I opened the folder again. I traced the signature with my finger slowly. Whoever forged it knew how I curled my W, how I slanted my T. It wasn't just fraud, it was impersonation, memory theft, identity theft. And it meant Evan had help. Someone notarized that form. Someone processed it. Someone got paid. This wasn't a mistake. It was a system, and I was supposed to go quietly into it. I opened a yellow legal pad and wrote the word. Witnesses. Underneath it. Notary. Realtor. Buyer. Bank rep. Hospital log. Then underlined. Motive, access, pension, benefits, sale, profit. Then I wrote one final word, all in capitals, VA check. It rang a bell, something I'd forgot, a notice, a delay I'd remember later. Right now, I was building a case. I lay back and stared at the ceiling. Brown stain, cracks, paint curling like dry skin. I whispered, you watching, Maggie? No answer, just the clunk of plumbing and a cough from the next room. They signed me out of life, I said, but they forgot to bury me. My son stole my house while I was on a ventilator, and someone let him. That's not just betrayal, that's conspiracy. And now they've given me the one thing they thought I'd lost. A reason to fight. I folded the deed and slid it into a new envelope labeled Exhibit A. And just like that, the old soldier had a new mission. Not all warriors wear medals. Some wear reading glasses and carry red pens, and they know exactly where to cut. I hadn't stepped inside a library in 20 years, but it still smelled the same dust, ink, silence. The kind of silence that used to calm me. Now it just buzzed in my ears. The legal aid desk sat near the back, tucked behind the local history shelf. No sign, just a laminated sheet that said, Free consultations Thursdays 10-2. She was already there, mid-40s, hair in a messy bun, reading glasses hanging low on her nose. She looked more like a librarian than a lawyer. That comforted me. I didn't need a shark. I needed someone who saw the world in ink and proof. You need help with a lease, a landlord? She asked without looking up. I set the deed copies down on the desk. Someone stole my house. Her eyes flicked to the papers. Sit. She didn't waste time. As soon as she scanned the top of the first page, her brows pinched. This signature was witnessed by a Michael Tran, she said. That name mean anything to you? No, I said, should it? Maybe not, but the notary stamp's a problem. She turned the paper toward me and tapped it with her red pen. This seal, it's digital. The state requires embossing for this type of transaction, and the date format is off. See the slashes. I leaned closer. I wouldn't know a fake if it slapped me in the face. She looked at me then, not pity, interest. You in the military. Retired Marine. That explains the organization. She nodded at my folder. You're more prepared than most. I used to carry a rifle. Now I carry copies. She smirked. Same battlefield, just different ammo. There's a kind of person who doesn't flinch when looking betrayal in the face. She'd seen it before. I could tell. She flipped another page. The problem is the deed's been processed. You don't just walk in and undo that. I don't want to undo it, I said. I want to prove it was never real. She nodded slowly. Then you'll need more than just anger. You'll need documentation, patterns, silence. Silence. She tapped her pen. You go banging on doors, confronting your son, making noise, you tip your hand, and they bury the trail. So what do I do? You collect, she said, paper, audio, surveillance. Any contradiction in his version is leverage in court. One lie can undo 10 pages of forged truth. I stared at her, the weight of it sinking in. This could take months. She nodded, justice always does. I looked down at her card, Helena Knox-esque. Volunteer, she said, for now. If this goes federal, I'll refer you to someone with firepower. But for now, I'll help you build the box. Let him crawl into it himself. A slow breath escaped my chest. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't alone. Why are you helping me? She paused. Because I've seen this before. Not your story, but the pattern. They wait until you're vulnerable. And they carve your name off the world. I nodded. That's exactly what it feels like. Then let's get your name back. We spent the next hour scanning everything. She made digital copies, sorted a timeline, flagged inconsistencies. You'll need statements, she said. Neighbors, doctors, hospital staff, and find out who notarized this, because they're either fake or scared. I gathered my folder. Thank you. Her voice followed me as I stood. One last thing, Mr. Whitmore. I turned. No threats, no contact, no emotion. Let them think you vanished. I nodded. I've done it before. She raised a brow. Combat. No, I said. Fatherhood. You don't need fists when you have files. You don't need rage when you have records. I walked out of that library with more than documents. I walked out with a strategy, and for the first time in weeks, hope. Sometimes the truth doesn't shout. Sometimes it hides in static, waiting to damn the one who left it behind. The phone was cracked down the middle like a fault line. The charger port only worked if I held it at just the right angle, and even then, the screen flickered like a bad memory. I sat on the motel bed, Helena's printouts beside me, my old phone in my lap, scrolling through the graveyard of voicemails. Most were junk, pharmacy refills, robocalls, Ruth checking in. And then I saw it. EVIN. Voicemail 0017. Date Thursday 2:44 p.m. The same day, they sedated me for emergency surgery. I hesitated, thumb hovering. My chest tightened, I hit play. Static, then his voice clear, sharp, and cold. Just sign it, old man. Nobody cares what you want. A pause, then. He's too out of it to notice. Just tell him the papers are for insurance. The message ended there. I didn't breathe. My fingers tightened until my knuckles ached. It wasn't meant for me. He hadn't hung up properly, or maybe he but dialed. Maybe the universe was just tired of his lies. I played it again. Just sign it, old man. There it was, contempt, cruelty, proof. Not just fraud, intent. I pressed the phone to my chest and let the silence settle. That 17-second clip had more truth in it than anything he'd said in the last 3 years. Helena didn't even sit when I showed it to her. She stood over the speaker like it was sacred. When it ended, her mouth tightened. This isn't just evidence, she said. This is motive. This is premeditated deception. She looked at me, eyes shining with something close to pride. This is gold. The law doesn't move for bruises. It moves for words, dates, and signatures. And Evan had just given me all three in one voicemail. Helena transcribed it on the spot. She printed it. We went to a notary at the UPS store downtown, one of the few places left that didn't ask questions when two tired-looking people walked in with folders full of betrayal. She paid the $10 fee herself. As the notary stamped it, I whispered, he thought no one would hear him. Helena smiled. He thought wrong. Back in her car, I stared out the window as the buildings blurred by. People moved through their lives with grocery bags, coffees, errands. I envied their ignorance. You okay? Helena asked, eyes still on the road. I nodded slowly. He called me old, powerless, like I was already dead. You're not. I know, I said, but now he will. She didn't respond. She didn't need to. That night I sat in the motel bathroom, the only place with a light that didn't flicker. I held the transcript in my lap, the notary's stamp at the bottom like a bullet casing. Evan's voice echoed in my head. Nobody cares what you want. He was wrong. Some people still cared. Helena. Ruth. The law. Even the voicemail, in its cold, accidental way, cared. It remembered. He left that message like a fingerprint on a murder weapon. He thought I'd never hear it, but now I can't unhear it. And neither will the judge. I folded the transcript and placed it in my folder under a new divider. Exhibit B, audio evidence. Then I did something I hadn't done in months. I smiled. Just once. Because Evan didn't just hand me a weapon. He loaded it, cocked it, and handed it to the man he tried to erase. You can lie to a courtroom. You can lie to your father, but you can't lie to the lens when it's watching in silence. He doesn't talk much, Helena said as we pulled up to a rusted blue van near the edge of town, but he sees everything. The man leaning against the van looked carved from quiet, mid-50s, scar across his chin like a misplaced comma, a camera bag on one shoulder, thermos in the other hand. Robert, this is Davis, she said. He nodded once, no handshake, just a grunt that could have meant hello or move. I respected that. I read your file, he said after a beat, eyes scanning me like a threat assessment. I'll do 3 weeks. You'll pay nothing unless I get proof. I don't want pictures of my son, I said. I want the truth. He opened his van door and pointed to the passenger seat. Then, buckle up. The next 3 weeks, Davis moved like a shadow. He kept his reports short and quiet. He's meeting with realtors, hosting walkthroughs, showing off the kitchen. My kitchen. 2 families toured it yesterday, he added. He told one he inherited it after you died. I didn't respond. I couldn't. Helena just wrote notes, jaw tight. He laughs when he talks about you, Davis said, like he's proud. I gripped the table hard enough to ache. Week 2, Davis handed me a tablet. Watch this, he said. I pressed play. There was Evan standing in the front yard, shaking hands with a man in a blazer. The for sale sign wasn't up yet, but the intent was clear. He leaned in, voice low but caught perfectly. He was out of it for weeks. I had to take care of it, signed it myself, borrowed a notary stamp from a guy I know. I paused the video. You got audio? Davis nodded. Directional mic from the car. I've used it in custody cases. Holds up. Send me a copy, Helena said quietly. Every lie Evan told was now framed in pixels, every smirk archived, every laugh immortalized, and every word documented. We sat in silence as Davis sorted dozens of photos across Helena's table. Here was Evan smiling in my living room. Here he was holding a glass of wine on the porch, toasting to fresh starts. and here he was signing papers with someone who looked too young to be legitimate. "This guy," Davis pointed. "That's your notary. Name's Michael Tran, no official license in the state registry." Helena's lips parted. "A ghost notary." "I'll get a plate number next time he shows," Davis added. I looked down at the photos, trying to reconcile the boy who once begged me to teach him how to ride a bike with the man now selling off my life like used furniture. "Do you ever get used to this?" I asked Davis. "No," he said, "but I stopped being surprised a long time ago." When Davis handed me the SD card, it felt heavier than it should have. Like it carried the weight of my legacy. "All of it's there," he said. "Time-stamped, duplicated, backed up to 2 drives." "Why 2?" I asked. He finally looked me in the eye. "Because I don't trust anyone." I nodded. "Neither do I." Helena walked me to the door after Davis left. "We're almost there," she said. "He gave us more than evidence. He gave us narrative. Judges don't just want facts. They want the story behind them." I stepped outside. The cold bit my skin, but I didn't flinch. "Let's give them the ending they don't expect," I said. She smiled. "One slow burn revenge." I looked out toward the street, where Evan had once learned to ride that bike I gave him for Christmas. "No," I said, "one reckoning." Evan thought he was staging a sale, but what he didn't know was that every step he took was already being recorded as Exhibit C. They didn't just steal my house. They tried to starve my dignity. But the past has a way of clawing its way back, even through garbage bags. I was digging through the last of the trash bags when I found it. Tucked between a mildew-stained flannel shirt and the corner of a shattered picture frame, a white envelope peeked out, sealed, unopened, marked with the blue eagle crest of the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. The date on it: 3 weeks before the surgery. I froze. It had been rerouted, addressed to my house, stamped "Return to sender, no forwarding address." I tore it open with shaking hands. Inside, a check. $72,180, 4.87. Retroactive benefits. 3 years worth of misfiled disability that had finally cleared. My knees buckled. I sat hard on the edge of the motel bed, the envelope crinkling in my grip like dry leaves. Helena arrived 15 minutes after my call. I didn't speak, just handed her the letter. Her eyes widened. "You never saw this?" "No," I rasped. "He did." She scanned the dates. "This could have changed everything." "He made sure it didn't." She ran her thumb over the check like it might bleed. "This isn't just hiding funds," she said. "This is financial coercion. He kept this from you to keep you dependent. That's a felony." "I served 30 years, I murmured, "and he tossed it in the garbage." Helena nodded. "Then let's make him pay for it." The amount on the check didn't matter as much as the silence it came wrapped in. That silence was orchestrated, cold, strategic. She filed the motions that afternoon. Fraud, financial abuse, forgery, elder coercion. The bank was notified. The real estate listing vanished within 24 hours. The mortgage account was locked. Helena called me the next morning, voice buzzing with urgency. "It worked. They froze everything. He can't sell. He can't refinance. He can't touch it." I stared at the ceiling. "He'll know it was me." "Good," she said. "Let him sweat." That night, Evan called. For the first time in months. The screen lit up with his name, EVAN. I didn't answer. He called again, left a voicemail. I pressed play. "Dad, okay, look. I didn't mean for it to go this far. We can fix this. I was just trying to. I thought you'd be gone longer, and then the check showed up, and please just call me." He sounded tired. Scared. Good. I saved the voicemail. Not because I needed more evidence. Because I wanted to remember the moment the cracks started to show. The moment he realized I wasn't buried, I was just beginning to rise. They say pride comes before the fall. But sometimes it's the silence after the stolen check that breaks the mask. I watched from across the street as Evan walked out to the driveway the next morning. He looked up and down the street like a man being watched, because he was. His jaw clenched as he opened the mailbox, empty. He kicked it hard. Ruth, watering her petunias, didn't flinch. He went back inside, shoulders hunched. I took another photo, time-stamped, dated. The man who laughed on the porch with realtors was starting to sweat. I walked back to my truck, folded the VA letter, and slid it into my folder. Exhibit D, hidden BNEFITS. It didn't just represent money, it was blood. It was pain. It was nights in sand, memories of friends who never got to age. And my son had tried to bury it in a trash bag. I whispered to the envelope as I closed the folder. "You're home now." You don't rob a soldier of his due and expect silence. You don't throw away legacy and think it won't come crawling back. He tried to starve me out. But he forgot. I come from a generation that knows how to survive the freeze. There's a special kind of justice in watching someone rehearse a lie, right as the truth walks up and tapes itself to their front door. The sun was high when we parked across the street. Helena sipped her coffee like it was a matinee. "He scheduled the open house for noon," she said, glancing at her watch, "and the sheriff's punctual." I didn't speak, just stared at my house, my former house, where Evan stood on the porch in slacks and fake confidence, greeting strangers like he hadn't committed fraud to get here. There was a fresh wreath on the door. My wife used to hang those every December. Evan hung his in March. A buyer walked past holding a brochure. I clenched my jaw. Inside, I could see Evan giving the tour, gesturing to the kitchen like he had built it himself. He laughed, like the floors hadn't held my wife's hospice bed, like the walls hadn't soaked up the prayers I whispered into them. "Do we go in?" I asked. Helena shook her head. "No, this is his stage, let him perform." At exactly 12:03 p.m., a black and white county cruiser pulled up. Two uniformed officers stepped out. The sheriff followed, papers in hand. I saw him walk up to the porch with calm purpose. Evan turned, still grinning, saying something about the backyard view, until he saw the badge. His smile cracked. The sheriff didn't say much, just pointed, said a few words, and turned to tape the foreclosure and legal hold notice on the door. Cameras clicked, not from media. From buyers. Phone flashes, whispers, murmurs rising like a tide. What does that mean? Is the house repossessed? Is it criminal? Evan stood frozen, sweat slick across his forehead. Helena folded her arms. There it is. Sometimes justice doesn't come in handcuffs. Sometimes it comes in headlines, and the look on a liar's face when the audience starts walking out. Evan tried to explain, his voice carried, loud, desperate. "There's been a misunderstanding. It's a bank error." He tore the notice off the door, crumpled it, shoved it in his pocket like truth was disposable. A woman holding a baby turned to her husband and whispered, "Isn't this the house that veteran got kicked out of?" My chest tightened. The husband replied, "Yeah, that story on Channel 4 today. Some family fraud thing." They left. One by one, they all did. Evan's realtor looked like he wanted to disappear. He shoved the brochures back in his satchel and muttered something about legal issues before speeding off. Helena exhaled. Local news said they'd push it at 5 p.m., but someone must have leaked the foreclosure early. "Good," I said. Across the street, Evan spotted us. His face twisted. He took a step forward, but Helena raised her phone. He stopped. I didn't move. Just stared. He mouthed something, I didn't care what. The man in front of me wasn't my son. He was a stranger who sold off our bloodline for a commission. Back in the car, Helena handed me a printed article already online. Veteran fights back after son steals deed during surgery. My foe, taken during deployment, was right under the headline. He tried to erase you, she said. Instead, he put a spotlight on you. I folded the article and slipped it into my folder. Exhibit E, public record. He wanted applause, he got headlines. He wanted sympathy, he got whispers. Evan thought the worst thing that could happen was losing the house. He was wrong. The worst thing was being seen. Really seen. And never trusted again. Across the street, the wind flapped the second notice the sheriff posted. One Evan didn't tear down. Pending investigation. That one stuck. There's a sound a man makes when his lies collapse. It's not a scream. It's a tremble in his voice like guilt begging not to be named. He banged on the door like a man, trying to knock the past off its hinges. Dad, open up. I didn't move. I wanted to see if he'd leave, if guilt had a time limit. Another bang. I know you're in there. I opened the door slowly, every muscle calm, controlled, the way you step into a room before defusing a bomb. Evan looked like hell, shirt wrinkled, hair messy, eyes bloodshot. For the first time, he looked smaller than me. Can we talk? He asked, voice tight. I stepped aside. 5 minutes. He paced the room like a cornered animal, hands moving too much. I didn't know it would. I didn't think you. He stopped, looked at me. You were supposed to be in the hospital longer. The check came and I panicked. I didn't speak, let him keep digging. I had debts, medical bills from Jess's dad, and you just sat in that house with your old papers and memories and... His voice cracked. I thought maybe this was the only way to move forward. I stared at him. This man who used to crawl into my bed after nightmares, who held my hand at Maggie's funeral like it was the only anchor he had. Now he stood in front of me, explaining theft like it was a spreadsheet error. You forged my name while I was unconscious, I said quietly. You sold my home. You threw away my life like junk mail. His lip trembled. I didn't mean to hurt you. Didn't you? I asked, because everything about this looks surgical. He winced. It wasn't personal. I let out a breath that sounded too much like a laugh. You changed the locks while I was under anesthesia. You moved strangers into my bedroom. You told people I was dead, Evan. I didn't say dead, he whispered. You didn't have to. That's the thing about betrayal, it doesn't shout. It whispers while you're asleep. It signs your name with a hand that never trembles. He dropped into the chair across from me, shoulders collapsing. I thought you were slowing down. You were barely keeping up with bills, I figured. I leaned forward, every syllable sharp. You figured I wouldn't survive surgery, so you started the estate sale early. He looked away, couldn't meet my eyes. I raised you better than this, I said. Silence. You raised me to survive, he muttered. No, I corrected. I raised you to carry legacy, not bury it alive. He shook his head. This is why I didn't want to talk. You see everything like a battle. I stood. That's because it is. You started it with a forged signature, and I'm going to finish it with evidence. He shot to his feet. You really gonna drag your son into court? You think a judge will care about a bitter old man and some voicemail? I stared into him. I'm not here for revenge, Evan. I'm here for recognition. You buried me. I'm just here to write the obituary. He flinched. Get out, I said. He stood frozen. Now. He moved to the door, then turned one last time, voice softer. Dad, please. I didn't answer. He slammed the door so hard the window rattled. I sat back down, every joint aching. Not from age, from the weight of it all. The air felt thick with ghosts. Maggie's photo stared at me from the dresser. I imagined what she'd say. Probably nothing, just that look. The one that said, "Don't mistake love for permission." There's a pain deeper than betrayal. It's the grief of seeing what your child has become, and knowing you helped shape the man holding the knife. But I wasn't done. Grief could wait. Justice couldn't. Betrayal doesn't always show up all at once. Sometimes it reveals itself in pieces, each one sharper than the last. Ruth made tea like she always did. Quiet hands, steady movements, the chipped mug with the cardinal on it. The one Maggie gave her the year she was diagnosed. She set it down in front of me, then sat across the table, fingers laced tightly. "You remember last summer," she began, eyes low, "when Evan came over to trim my hedges?" I nodded. "You said he only stayed 20 minutes. Her eyes flicked up. "He didn't come for the hedges." I waited. "He asked me to talk to you, to convince you to sell the house. Said you were struggling, said you weren't remembering things right." My throat tightened. "I told him to get the hell off my porch," she said, voice suddenly sharp. "Told him I knew manipulation when I saw it. He smiled like it was just business." I stared into my tea. "He said the house was more useful, as equity than as a museum to grief." That's what I'd become to him, a museum. Full of old wars, old ghosts, and land he couldn't wait to flip. Ruth reached under the table and pulled out a weathered shoebox. "I wasn't sure when to give you this." She set it down gently. I opened it, hands trembling. Letters, envelopes yellowed with time. Maggie's handwriting. "He threw them in the bin," Ruth whispered. "The day after you went into surgery, said they were junk. I pulled them out when he wasn't looking." My heart pounded as I opened the first. August 12, 1993. "Bobby, if anything ever happens to me, promise me this house stays yours. I want it to be your safe place, your anchor." I blinked hard. The words blurred, then broke me. I wept. Ruth reached over, her hand on mine. No words, just the warmth of someone who remembered what Evan had forgotten, that history lives in ink and memory, not dollar signs. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" I asked, voice raw. "Because I hoped I was wrong about him," she said. "But now I see he planned it, long before your heart gave out." I opened letter after letter. Maggie writing about our porch, about the way the floorboards creaked in winter, about how she could still hear Evan's little footsteps when no one else could. In every letter, the house wasn't property. It was sanctuary. And he tried to sell it like a stock. Some things aren't meant to be inherited. Some things are meant to be guarded. And I'd failed her. Until now. Ruth poured more tea, her hands now shaking. "What will you do?" I folded the letter and placed it carefully back in the box. "I'll submit them as evidence," I said. Every word Maggie wrote, every word he tried to erase. Ruth nodded. "She'd be proud of you." "No," I whispered. "She'd be furious I let it go this far." Ruth gripped my wrist gently. "You were in a hospital bed. He took advantage. That's not your shame, it's his." I looked her in the eye. "Not anymore, I'm taking it back." I carried the box to my truck like it was sacred. Inside were her words. And in court they'd be her voice. Evan wanted to strip me of home, memory, history. But he forgot one thing. You can throw letters in the trash. But you can't erase a mother's wishes from a courtroom. Not when the ink still bleeds. You don't need a weapon to fight back. Sometimes all it takes is a signature and the will to see it through. Helena placed the papers in front of me like a loaded rifle. "Here's the filing. 1 count of deed fraud, 1 of elder abuse, 2 of forgery, and a supplemental motion to freeze financial assets tied to the sale." She slid me the pen. "You okay?" My hand hovered over the dotted line. My name printed below in sharp, sterile font. I was trained to sign orders for men going into fire, I said quietly. This one's for me. She nodded. You ready? My grip tightened. Let's pull the trigger. I signed. The ink soaked through like it knew it belonged. 3 days later, Evan was served at his workplace. Helena's contact, a clerk at the courthouse, confirmed everything. He was leading a team meeting, wearing a new blazer, talking about legacy planning. That's when the server walked in, calm, direct, handed him the envelope in front of the entire conference room. He opened it, read the header. And cracked. He threw his water bottle, cursed, called the server a liar, then stormed out. Every eye followed him. The golden boy tarnished. That night my phone buzzed. Voicemail EVAN0042. I hit play. You smug old bastard. You think this makes you righteous. You think dragging me through court will fix your pathetic life. You're gonna die alone in a motel and nobody's gonna care. Not even Ruth. Not even Mom if she were alive. Click. I sat in silence, the words echoing. Then I saved the message. Not because I needed it as evidence, though I did, but because I wanted to remember the sound of his unraveling. Justice doesn't always knock on the front door. Sometimes it shows up in a suit and serves you everything you thought you buried. At the courthouse the next morning, I signed the affidavits. My hand shook slightly, not from weakness but from gravity, the finality of it. Helena guided me through it like a battlefield medic, calm, clear, no wasted motion. Next step is discovery, she said. Then the pre-trial conference. You'll have to testify. I will. No nerves. I looked her in the eye. I survived mortar fire, Maggie's cancer, and waking up to find my son stole my life. I can survive a courtroom. She nodded, damn right. We walked out into the morning light, papers filed, judges signed, date set. 2 weeks. 2 weeks until the world heard the truth. And Evan would sit across from me, not as a son but as a defendant. Back at the motel, I pulled out Maggie's letters, the VA check, the photos from Davis, the deed copy with the forged signature, the voicemail transcript. My arsenal. I laid it all out across the bed. One piece at a time. Like laying down bullets before a mission. I whispered her name. Maggie, we're almost there. And then out loud, to no one but the ceiling stained with age and silence. I'm not coming for revenge. I'm coming for recognition. He buried me in silence. But I wrote my name in ink, filed in triplicate. The old soldier in me whispered 3 words. Steady. Aim. Fire. Some wars are fought with bullets, others with paper. And sometimes it's not the loudest man who wins, but the one with the most truth in his hands. The courtroom smelled like lemon oil and fear. Benches polished to a military shine, ceiling fans whirring like whispering blades. I sat in the plaintiff's chair, folder on my lap, suit 2 sizes too loose. Helena sat beside me, heels crossed, eyes razor-sharp. Evan sat at the defense table 3 seats down in a charcoal blazer he never earned. His tie was crooked. His smirk was gone. The judge entered, gavel cracked once. Let's begin. Evan's lawyer stood first, tall, expensive, too rehearsed. Your Honor, he began, we contend that Mr. Whitmore is not of sound capacity. His claims, while emotional, lack verifiable foundation. What we have here is a bitter family dispute, not fraud. He gestured to me, with the kind of smile people reserve for dying dogs. Mr. Whitmore's recent medical history includes heart surgery, post-operative confusion, and, respectfully, signs of cognitive decline. I didn't blink. He continued, the deed was signed legally. The transfer occurred under advisement. There is no credible proof of coercion. Helena didn't flinch, she just stood. Your Honor, she said calmly, we'd like to begin with Exhibit A. She played the voicemail first. Evan's voice filled the courtroom, amplified, unmistakable. "Just sign it, old man. Nobody cares what you want. He's too out of it to notice. Just tell him the papers are for insurance." A silence followed, thick, ugly. The judge's brow furrowed. Jurors shifted. Evan stared at the floor like it might crack open and swallow him. Helena spoke again. "Exhibit B, scanned deed with notary stamp. Please note the seal format." She pointed. The notary used an invalid digital seal, and the date format is illegal under state law. The notary, Michael Tran, does not exist in the official database. The judge leaned in. "Are you alleging forgery, counselor?" "We're proving it, Your Honor." Then came the photos. Davis had mounted them to a digital slideshow. Evan on my porch, wine in hand. Evan laughing, gesturing to a for sale sign. Evan speaking to a fake notary, time-stamped. Evan holding a check with my name partially scratched out. Each photo dropped like a hammer. They tried to bury me under silence and legality, but they didn't count on me keeping receipts, real ones. Evan's lawyer tried to object. The judge raised a hand. "Enough said." He turned to me. "Mr. Whitmore, would you like to speak?" I stood slowly, hand steady. The whole room shrank away except the bench, the judge, and my son, looking 12 years old again in a suit too big. "My name is Robert C. Whitmore," I said. "I served 30 years in the Marines. I buried my wife in the home I bought with combat pay. I survived heart failure. What almost killed me wasn't the surgery, it was waking up to find my son had signed my name, changed the locks, and sold off every memory I had." I paused, let the words settle. This isn't confusion, this isn't bitterness, this is theft. Helena placed Maggie's handwritten letter on the overhead projector. The words flickered across the courtroom wall. "This house must always remain your safe place." The judge stared at the screen for a long time, then looked down at Evan. "Anything to say, Mr. Whitmore?" Evan's voice cracked. It was never supposed to go this far. The judge tapped his gavel once. "Then you should have stopped at the signature. Justice doesn't knock. It enters with evidence and leaves no room for denial." Evan didn't look at me as the judge called for recess. But I looked at him. Not with hate, with recognition. Not of who he was, but who he chose to be. And that was enough. A man's true character isn't revealed by bloodlines or bank statements. It's revealed by the way his neighbors say his name when he's not around. The second day of the trial, the courtroom felt different. Heavier. Not with silence, with presence. People filled the benches, not just lawyers or court staff. These were neighbors, clerks from the grocery store, retired vets from the American Legion. A few faces I barely remembered, but they remembered me. And they remembered Evan, too. Helena leaned in. "We had 9 people agree to testify, unprompted." "Why?" "Because when you get betrayed, it's private. But when someone throws a good man in the gutter, people talk." First on the stand was Ruth. She walked slowly but stood tall, back straight like she was made of something older than bone. She took her oath without blinking. "Tell us what you witnessed," Helena asked. Ruth folded her hands in her lap. "The day Mr. Whitmore came home from the hospital, he found his belongings, clothes, photo albums, medals, tossed on the curb like trash." Gasps rippled through the room. Helena nodded. "And who did you see remove those items from the house?" "His son, Evan. He carried the boxes himself, locked the door behind him." "And did he say anything?" Ruth hesitated, her voice tightened. "He said, and I quote, 'He won't be needing this crap anymore. The old man's dead weight.'" The courtroom went still, so quiet I could hear the tick of the old wall clock. Even the judge leaned forward slightly. I looked at Evan. His face was blank, pale, he wouldn't look up. The jury turned toward him slowly, like they were seeing him for the first time, without the tie, without the act. Just Evan, and everything he tried to hide. Shame is a slow burn, but vindication, that's a cold, clean flame. It doesn't scream, it just peels the skin off lies. More witnesses followed. Mrs. Henderson said Evan approached her about liquidating the house weeks before I got sick. Mr. Lang from 2 houses down testified that Evan told him, "My dad's practically a ghost. I'm just moving the paperwork along." Each one chipped away at the image he'd built. Each one drove the nail deeper. Then came Tom, the mailman. He testified that my VA checks had started being returned to sender weeks before I was out of surgery. He asked me to hold the mail, Tom said his dad was moved to a facility and wouldn't be coming back. Another ripple of disgust spread across the courtroom. Even the bailiff muttered, "Jesus." I sat still through all of it. Not because I wasn't angry. Because I wanted to remember every second. Every word. Because this wasn't just my fight anymore. The town saw what he did. And they weren't looking away. Evan's lawyer tried to push back. Objection, hearsay. But the judge waved him off more than once. They're here, they're speaking under oath. That's not hearsay, that's memory. Legacy isn't written by money. It's written by the people who remember who you were when no one was watching. When Helena rested our case for the day, the judge called for recess. People stood and whispered, faces turned. Not toward me. Toward Evan. I caught fragments. Disgusting. Poor man. What kind of son? Evan tried to leave quickly, shoulders hunched, eyes forward. But you can't outrun a town. Back in the hallway, Ruth hugged me without asking. Justice is loud, she whispered, but truth echoes. I came here hopping for justice. But what I got was clarity. Evan hadn't just lost the house. He lost his mask. And the whole town watched it fall. Justice doesn't always come with applause. Sometimes it comes with a gavel strike and the sound of a liar falling apart. The courtroom felt colder that morning, like even the walls were holding their breath. I sat straight-backed, folder on my lap, Maggie's last letter tucked inside. My palms didn't sweat, my heart didn't race. I wasn't nervous. I was ready. Evan looked hollow, skin pale, eyes sunken, suit jacket wrinkled like it had been slept in. He didn't look like a man defending his future. He looked like one watching it crumble in real time. The judge shuffled papers, adjusted his glasses. Then silence. Not a whisper in the gallery, not a cough, not even Helena moving beside me. The moment had arrived. This court has reviewed all submitted evidence, the judge began, voice measured but firm, including notarized transcripts, medical documentation, photographic surveillance, and personal witness testimony. He looked up at Evan. Mr. Evan Whitmore, this court finds substantial and deliberate misconduct in the procurement of the deed to 318 Sycamore Lane. Specifically, forgery, fraudulent notarization, elder coercion, and financial concealment. He turned toward me. Therefore, this court rules, the deed transfer is null and void. Full ownership is restored to the legal title holder, Robert C. Whitmore. My breath caught not in shock but in release. The weight on my chest, heavier than any heart attack, lifted. That house wasn't just mine on paper. It was mine in blood, in brick, in every corner Maggie touched with her hands. And now it came back. The judge continued. Furthermore, Mr. Evan Whitmore is ordered to pay restitution in the amount of $72,184.87 to the plaintiff, reflecting the concealed VA payment and damages for emotional distress. Helena exhaled next to me. The judge leaned forward. This court will also recommend criminal fraud charges to the district attorney's office for review. While we do not impose jail time today, this judgment will follow you, Mr. Whitmore, for the rest of your life." Then he raised the gavel and brought it down. Crack! Evan collapsed. It wasn't theatrical. His knees just buckled. He sobbed, face in hands, body folded over the defense table. "No, please don't do this. Please, I was desperate." The bailiff took a step forward, unsure. The judge didn't flinch. "You had every opportunity to do the right thing, Mr. Whitmore. You chose otherwise." Evan lifted his head, eyes wild, looking around for sympathy. There was none. I stood slowly, folder in hand. Helena touched my arm gently, but I didn't stop. I walked past Evan without looking down. His voice followed. "Dad, please, we can fix this. I didn't mean to." I stopped. Spoke just loud enough for him to hear. "You meant every word, and now so do I." I walked out. The hallway was full. People nodded at me. Some clapped my shoulder. Ruth was waiting, eyes wet, smile wide. She opened her arms and I let her hug me, just once. "You did it," she whispered. "No," I said, "the truth did." Back at the truck, I sat for a moment before starting the engine. I stared at the courthouse steps, remembering how many battles I'd survived. This one wasn't the bloodiest, but it might have been the most personal. Justice doesn't shout. It waits, it watches. And when it speaks, it doesn't beg for mercy. It delivers it. With a gavel crack. And silence that no son can argue with. Revenge wants noise. Justice wants silence. And sometimes victory sounds like a key turning in the right lock. We pulled into the driveway just after sunset. Ruth sat in the passenger seat, clutching a pie she insisted on bringing. "A house needs something warm to come back to," she'd said. Helena followed behind in her car, folders still tucked under one arm like the fight hadn't fully left her yet. The porch light was already on. Motion sensor still worked. My name, freshly engraved, sat clean on the mailbox. Robert C. Whitmore. Again. The locksmith had come earlier that morning, changed the deadbolt, replaced the doorknob, polished the brass till it gleamed. I stepped up alone, held the new key between my fingers, slid it into the lock. Click. The door opened like it had been waiting. Ruth stepped in first, whispering, "Smells like fresh paint." Helena followed, eyes scanning everything like she was still on the case. They cleaned it before the auction. Fresh coat, new carpet, probably trying to cover up what they did. But I knew better. The betrayal didn't live in the floors. It lived in the walls, quiet, deep, but it couldn't speak anymore. Because I was back. The locks had changed. But so had I. I walked through each room like memory was guiding me. My footsteps echoed against years of moments. There was the corner where Maggie kept her garden boots. The wall where Evan's growth chart was still faintly visible under the new paint. The kitchen drawer that still stuck when you pulled it too fast. All of it intact. All of it mine again. Helena stayed silent, letting me have it. Ruth lit a candle in the living room. "This place still feels like her." I nodded. She never really left. I sat down in my old armchair. Same cushion, same angle to the window. Ruth placed the pie on the coffee table, then excused herself, touching my shoulder gently. "You have your house," she said. "Now take your piece." Helena lingered. "Do you want me to file the property reinstatement forms tomorrow?" "Yes," I said, "but not tonight." She smiled, then left, closing the door softly behind her. I sat alone, moonlight brushing across the floorboards. Opened the small tin on the side table. Inside, my medals, my wife's wedding ring, a faded photo of us from 1968. I placed them in my lap like anchors. This house, I whispered, was never just wood and nails, it was us. My voice cracked, I didn't care. Maggie, we're home. Not everything stolen can be restored. But some things, if you fight long enough, can be reclaimed. Not with fists, but with patience, with records, with truth. I stood once more, walked to the front door. Closed it, locked it. Not because I was afraid, but because I could. Across town, I knew the foreclosure notice still fluttered on Evan's door. That house wasn't his anymore, not in title, not in image, not in legacy. He would live with the echo of what he did. I didn't need revenge. He'd wake up every morning and see his own reflection. That was punishment enough. Back in my armchair, I pulled a blanket over my legs. Listened to the quiet. No lawyers. No doctors. No signatures. Just wind brushing the shutters. Just home. Justice doesn't roar. It whispers. Steady. Like a heartbeat. Like a man sleeping for the first time in years. In peace. Because the key finally fits.